welcome back to Pyramid Plus. We are on day 3. So all of the handouts are in for this sessions today, are in the Google folder. So you'll find all of our handouts in there for the sessions today. Please make sure the sign-in sheet, I think everybody has signed in. Make sure you sign in so you get credit for being here. Also pass around an agenda and the evaluation. So make sure you have all of that. Everybody find computer plugins all set to go? Awesome. Thanks, Michelle, for bringing that again.
Sure.
The wheel of funds, right? So as always, we like to thank our Pyramid Plus funders, the same as every session we've done, but it's important to acknowledge the support and funding that they have given to the Pyramid Plus Center. So the Department of Human Services, Division of Child Care, Division for Developmental Disabilities Early Intervention, Part C, Division of Behavioral Health, Division of Child Welfare, the Colorado Health Foundation, the Temple Hoy Buell Foundation, and the Mile High United Way. So today our agenda is that we will be talking about designing supportive environments. We'll have an activity around assessing the learning environment. We will talk about zoning within the classroom, promoting social interactions through the environment, large and small group environments. We'll have an activity to design an ideal learning environment. And so you'll get to get up and move around because I'll have you go downstairs and you can use the supplies down there in the IRC to design your learning environment. Then we'll talk about supporting children with special needs. We'll do your activity, your thought seeds, and we're going to, if it's okay with everyone, we will do our quality improvement at the end of the day again, as we've done in the past. Does that work for everyone? Okay. Additionally, you have a paper copy of our agenda for today, as well as this copy is in the Google folder so that you have it. Is 30 minutes okay for lunch today? Does that work for everyone? Okay. We may end up with a little more time depending on how the sessions go, but I scheduled 30 minutes. Is that all right? Okay. And then I think that just based on what we've been able to do in the past, we should be finished by 3:30 at the latest. So.
Audrey and I have a meeting at 2:30.
Okay. 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 So we'll see how.
Downstairs.
Okay. We'll see how quickly with covering the content, but if we can get through it so that you get all the content.
Yep.
We might be able to. You guys are a good crowd, so. So our learning objectives for today is that you'll be able to describe the relationship between environmental variables and children's social, emotional competence and behavior. Participants, you will receive practical strategies to develop physical environments for young children. And you'll learn how to create and facilitate the development of responsive and supportive environments for children birth through 5 years. Today, there's going to be some of this information is not going to be new, but I think it just allows us to think more in-depthly around designing those learning environments. And as we get called in to support in our center classrooms or in other places, just really thinking about, is the learning environment supporting the child? And while today we'll only talk through 8 to 5, and then we all know when we get into kindergarten and beyond, that is just as important to make sure the learning environment is supporting the child. So logistics will establish our ground rules or norms. The parking lot is right there, so just a reminder, and there's stickies on your table. So please feel free to go ahead and put any questions, anything you want to cover. We'll review, in a second, we'll review the session handouts. We'll go through to make sure that you can find them all. And then everybody knows where the restroom is. There's kitchenette up here on this floor. There's a kitchenette downstairs that you can fill your water. If you brought a coffee Keurig, you can use the machine. So I noticed that last time. So for today, for our working, our ground rules or our norms and working together, what do you guys need today?
Yes, we need to be present.
I thought about just keeping the ones we develop each time, but then I didn't want to assume in case somebody needed something different for today.
I think the ones we had last time were well.
Do you remember what they were?
I think it was, be present, stay engaged, active engagement, appropriate use of technology.
Yeah.
What was the one about technology? Appropriate use of technology.
And it wasn't needs time conscientious.
Yeah, time conscientious.
I don't know what I just did here.
Was there something else that I?
Time conscientious.
Where's my screen? Isn't vertical. Sorry, I was trying to pull up the handouts, so while you guys were doing that. Anything else you think of? So are you okay if we keep track of those and then we can bring those for the next day and just add to them?
Sounds
good. Since we're the same group. So everybody, you have the handouts, should be in the Google folder. Is everybody able to find those? Yep. And so we'll go through just so you know what's in there. And again, as always, your slides, the slides will have, as you see, remember that, I'm trying to find one. We'll tell you which handout. There we go. So like here with this activity that we'll be doing with Assess the Learning Environment, we'll refer to handout 7.1. And just a reminder that all the handouts are at the end of the PowerPoint. So there we have 7.1, Assessing the Learning Environment. And then we have some tips for teachers, zoning in preschool classrooms. Supervisor's Guide to Zoning. So some nice questions, I think a nice resource for us again to use as we're looking at behavior. It has notes. This is just giving you in the physical environment a materials list, like what are some things you should see in there for different age groups. Again, more tips for the teacher. Teacher's guide to help planning as they're setting up their routines. I was thinking, Candace, as I was going through this, session of the teacher, the kindergarten teacher that we helped out early in the school year that had so many students, but her learning environment wasn't designed. I mean, she had 30 kindergartners, but it is a lot. But her learning, I mean, I think there were some things she could have done differently to really help out. And so as I was going through this session, I was thinking about that and all the nice resources.
Yeah, well, and I find too, just coming from a preschool teacher background, that a lot of what we learn when we're setting up specifically a 3-year-old classroom or a 4-year-old classroom is not necessarily something that kindergarten teachers get.
Right.
When it's just a year apart. And I'm like, wow, you know, this kind of content that we receive when we're setting up our preschool environments is definitely something that our kinder teachers need.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about it last year. With my early ed partner, I talked about it a lot. Really, early education is through 3rd grade. We forget that.
Yeah.
And so really everything we're learning, while it specifically is called out for through birth to 5, I mean, we can have 5-year-olds in 1st grade.
Right.
And then really when we think about early ed, it goes through 3rd grade. And so the optimal situation would be if we could provide this training through 3rd grade and help people understand. So then again, just the preschool physical environment checklist that we'll get to. Supportive environment, so an action plan for how to develop your environment. And then our session resources. So again, just a reminder about the TAXI website and all of the TAXI and the SEPL websites and all of the resources that are found there. As well as, I don't know if you all are aware of this, I had kind of forgotten about Head Start. Has a lot of resources on their websites as well. And this lists some specific, the Head Start Center for Inclusion.
They have some really nice webinars too that are like in-service suites that are like 15 minutes long that are great just for like a little teacher training. The one on zoning is really good.
So, I mean, I've even thought, as I was going through this again as a reminder, and I remember thinking this the first time, like for our primary AN classrooms, like all this that we're gonna talk about today in all 3 sessions is totally applicable to those
And
classrooms.
And
And
I even have a concern with our intermediate starting at 3rd grade. I really feel like those 3rd graders need to stay with the primary because they get a huge shock when they go to that 3 through 5 a.m.
Yeah, agreed. So, and then of course we'll end with your thoughts, the thought seeds today. So, was everybody able to find their handouts? Okay, great. I need to put that away because I unplugged it because it did something. I keep trying to use it and it's not plugged in. So any questions about any logistics, handouts, anything before we get started into the content today? No? Okay. So today is going to be all around developing supportive environments. And so all 3 sessions today will address that. And so session 7, which we are completing right now, is going to address the physical environment. Session 8 is schedules and routines, and session 9 is expectations and transitions. And as always, like I know this isn't going to be new information to you all, but I think the benefit is just the resources it provides. Because, you know, just going back through and reviewing, I'm like, oh yeah, now I can pull that out and look at it. So really when we think about developing high quality supportive learning environments for children, we think about 3 things or 3 key elements. So they provide engagement for every child, universal design for learning. And so I know we think about universal design for learning in terms of actual learning, but it started first as how you develop your environment. So just thinking about that. And then making accommodations and providing support. So when we think about session 7 is really going to be around organization. Session 8 is really organization and management, and session 9 is going to just be all around management of the physical environment. So designing a supportive environment. So classroom organization. So here in session 7, we're going to touch on the physical environment. In sessions 7, 8, and 9, we'll talk about visual supports. Then we'll talk about routines in session 8. We'll talk about developing a daily schedule in session 8 and transitions in session 9. Also, though, what we touch on is really that classroom management and talking about how routines in session 8, rules and expectations in session 9, and giving effective directions in session 9 again. And so very relevant, I mean, in my opinion, very relevant to what we work on every day when we're called into a school to help support. Like last week when we were at one of our schools and helping support with kindergarten, I was thinking about that also, wondering how that classroom is set up and what things are in place.
Right.
So when we think about the research around how we design our classrooms, here's a little bit of that. Environments that are engaging, predictable, and characterized by ongoing positive adult-child interactions are necessary for promoting children's social and emotional development and preventing challenging behaviors. Like, I think none of us would disagree with that research. And it is a different way to think about it when we think about the environment versus what's wrong with the child, or even what are the adults doing. So really taking a look at that environment instead and figuring out how that's impacting the child. So when we think about promoting children's success, we want to be sure that we create an environment where everyone feels welcome. We want to support engagement and social interactions for all children. We want to provide a physical environment that allows children to know what to do. Understand that adults and adult behavior are a part of the learning environment. So the physical environment should be safe, free from hazards, and clean, have an adequate ratio of adults to children, have natural light from windows and other soft lighting, be aesthetically pleasing, be uncluttered, be aged individually and culturally appropriate, inviting and interesting, and space for caregiving routines. So for our younger kids, we want to be sure that if there are diapering, toileting, feeding, napping, resting needs, that space is provided. So when you think about this list, what would you expect to see when you walk into, we'll just stick with some of our early childhood or even our kindergarten classrooms. What would you expect to see in that classroom?
Centers that are well labeled and down at the children's eye level. You'd expect to see, talking about centers, but you'd also expect to see the classroom, maybe the space designated for different activities, like an area where you have a snack bed, an area where you do art in, so that's organized that way. I would expect to see lots of pictures and visuals.
I also expect to see a seat.
Yeah, that's watching.
Yeah, I think
Right.
process, as well as a you know, an area for those that are potty trained to use the facilities, and then those that are not, changing area. But it's called in,
Right.
closed in area.
Right.
You'd expect to see them be able to have a space for their own things, maybe water bottles, you know. And I think routines, talking about visuals, you know, routines, picture visual schedules for the class and maybe for individual students.
So, when we think about so some of the things that you all were thinking about, but then we think about what are some essential spaces, similar to what you mentioned, in a responsive and supportive environment. So we want special spaces for nurturing children. We want to be sure that there is a quiet space, because it's not only children that have some sensory needs or behavior needs, it needs a quiet space at times. All kids, really. And a space for the use of creative art materials, and we mentioned that, for delighting the senses. So like I see sand tables, water table, things like that. Space for peekaboo and social games, space for development of large motor skills, space for toys, manipulatives, and books, space for children to build and construct, space for dramatic and pretend play, and then, of course, always allowing them to be outside as well. Many of our schools have a separate ECE playground, but some don't, and the kids still have access to. I was in an ECE room last week doing an observation for a student who's going to be transitioning to kindergarten, and one of the things I noticed was that the space is limited in the classroom, and so she limited how many children could go into the dramatic play, and the kids themselves, I kind of laughed and said, well, they have good problem solving skills. I don't know that she thought that was very funny, but they would squeeze their pictures really close together to try and get in that. Dramatic play is a popular
So
one.
popular. Yeah.
And so just thinking about, so how do you ensure that it's not always the same kid? Because it's really who gets up first and gets their picture where they want to be. And some of, the little girl I was observing, she wanted to be in dramatic play, but the other kids beat her because she was finishing her snack. And so then she went to blocks, which she wasn't very interested in. So then she just wandered around and kind of got in everybody else's center. So just thinking about when we design those, how do we make sure that
What's the popular one, so
Right.
you allocate
Yeah,
space
how
if
much
you can.
or how much time is
Yeah.
someone allowed to be in that more popular one, so.
And I didn't ask the teacher, maybe she does watch that and kind of rotate kids around, but I thought that was interesting. Okay, so next, we're just gonna do this next activity as a whole group. And so if you wanna refer to handout 7.1, we're gonna look at some pictures and assess the learning environment of each of these pictures. And what 7.1 has is, go ahead and take a minute to review the questions on this. And so we're looking at, first of all, as we look at each picture, we're gonna think about, would it be appropriate for an infant, a toddler, or a preschooler, which age group? We wanna explain how the environment offers responsive care for adults, if that's applicable. Explain how the environment supports social, emotional development, how it could promote peer interaction, and are the materials interesting, and are they developmentally appropriate? So we're gonna go through this series of pictures, and we'll just talk about them as a group. So here's the first picture, and this is a picture, you can see where it's from, World Bank Children's Center, courtesy of Harvest Resources. So if you'll refer to your questions there on your handout for a couple minutes, and then we'll talk about Alright. So, what do you think? What age group would this environment be appropriate for?
Yeah, I would agree.
Or infant too, one of those with the rocking chairs, to be able to rock infants. So infant toddler.
And even in our toddler classrooms, through the state, we're required to have those kind of rocking chairs, just as a requirement in the classroom.
You can sit and books.
Yeah, it's a great space. Kids love it. I mean,
Yeah.
they just
Do
do.
a little
They,
patting when someone's
Yeah.
upset.
they still need that. I mean, it'd be nice if some of our preschool rooms who are really looking into, do we have the space? Because there's, every once in a while, everybody just needs that space to just kind of
Self-soothe and rock.
Yeah.
just calm down.
Great places for toddlers to sit and rock themselves.
The space underneath here, oh, I forgot, this doesn't let me do that. But where the pillows are
Yeah.
and up above even.
Mhm.
And with the, like, I'm assuming that's telling them what they're gonna do, like when they come in the classroom and things. It's
Is
probably
that a book rack or a cradle?
It's a book rack.
And then they have their, is that art supplies maybe I'm looking at?
They look like, fine motor activities, like they're gonna pop other things in.
So probably likely toddler. So do you think this environment supports social emotional development, peer interaction?
There's not a lot of play stuff. I mean, granted, there could be more in the room we're not seeing, but it looks more like other than the little table, kind of a quiet piece.
I mean, you might have some peer interaction when they're at the table, the little table. Maybe on the couch reading books together, or under the little thing. So there may be some peer reaction, then I see what is that thing called? On the,
Bench or something.
yeah, on the right side there,
Mhm.
isn't that,
Oh, yeah.
the music?
Xylophone kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
Cool.
So what things do you think this little space might lend itself more to than the previous one?
More social, emotional kind of interactions with peers.
Imagine everybody.
It's cool. Just the front room.
Toddler.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, and even cribs that could.
And then in the back, yeah.
I just wish that books were organized. I think it's just my own personal preference. I mean, there's like a ton of books just on the shelf, and I'm just thinking in terms of true accessibility. So maybe having them in labeled baskets instead of
Great.
just
Yeah.
all on the shelf like that.
Well, and see how it's very close right there between
Yeah.
like the trucks and what does it say? Cars, trucks, coaches, Canon, I think it says on there, and then the books. Yeah, it's a very tight space.
Yeah.
It almost looks more like a storage space for adults, you know, where they keep things rather than access. And it looks like the kids maybe could access the little baskets, but I'm seeing things just kind of stacked up there.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Where do they go then to play or use the materials?
That's you.
Thank you.
Infant toddler, yeah.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and toddler. So what about this? Do you think, bless you.
Excuse me, sorry.
Does this environment lend itself, since we're talking about infant toddler, to that responsive care from adults? Yeah.
Yeah. It might be awful, it looks awful cluttered.
Well, and think about if you had babies in those little seats, I mean,
And toddlers walking around.
Well, my question would be, there's no, like, in this space, I don't see anywhere where an adult can sit and
right,
rock
exactly.
an
Yeah,
infant.
yeah.
Or
Or even for infants to be
toddler.
able to get on the ground and have
Right.
some
Yeah.
tummy time or
Kind
anything
of
like that.
say it,
That
that
really-
small carpet space.
Uh-huh.
and
Floor, yeah.
I think those seats kind of lend themselves to putting a baby there while you're doing something else.
Yeah.
Right,
And, you know, consider them safe, which
Right.
on the top of a tile floor, that's a false assumption.
Especially if there's toddlers.
Mhm.
They wanna love those
Messing.
babies.
Yes, they
Sometimes they're a little
They
rough.
wanna take them out of the little seats.
Even just rock them and rock them too hard, because
Right.
it's move.
Uh-huh. And then this environment.
Very stimulating.
Yeah.
Too much, I
Yeah.
think.
That's the way a lot of the rooms that I walk into look like.
There's that balance between making sure that everybody has something to do with the overstimulation, I think.
Well, and if you're gonna have that much, what are are there signs for how you can use it? You know, I don't see any of that.
And it may be a pretty tight space and they're, trying to get all those spaces in that smaller, little spaces and the bigger space is not big enough.
It's not really organized in centers or anything, it doesn't look like.
It does look like this is a place that kids play, though.
Yeah, right, that are engaging. And there are letters hanging up
There are, it's evident.
Lots of light.
But I could definitely see how, for some kiddos, it might be
Yeah.
Too much.
too much.
First day outside of home, yeah, I walk into this.
Well, and I just think about often the kids that we end up being called in to support are students with special needs, and, you know, what are the pieces in place for them in an environment like this? A student, or a little guy that does, and usually it's little guys, that just don't have impulse control, like, this is gonna be difficult.
Think of all the things you just starts pulling out.
And just go to the next one and pull out 5 other things.
Exactly.
So,
Oh, and that phone cord, that would, to me, would be a hazard, the way that phone cord is hanging
I don't
down.
even see what you're talking
yeah,
On the
right
top of
there.
that.
Oh,
My
huh.
laser,
Good
Yeah.
eye.
I'm like, I don't like that hanging down like
Yeah.
that.
I don't like the plants on that shelf. The kid will run into it and
Mhm.
it'll topple right on it. Only because.
okay. Well, so that gives you kind of an idea of, you know, what, when we first come in, and maybe that's something we can talk about at the end of the day today, how we can take and use some of this material to think about, are we going in and making recommendations and really looking at that learning environment? And what maybe suggestions we could offer. We know, of course, that it all depends on if the teacher will take our suggestions, but if we can, some ideas. Alright, so now, so just so you know, when we talk about Pyramid Plus, what Pyramid Plus looks for, when they're assessing a learning environment, is that they want to be sure that it's developmentally appropriate environment that supports and encourages the children's social emotional needs as well as language, cognitive, and motor development. So it really should support everything, the whole child. That we have responsive care for infants and toddlers in situations. We don't see that necessarily, but that is something that they also, within Pyramid Plus, want to be sure is happening, that it's has engagement and that children are able to participate in that, and that teaches management skills for older toddlers and preschoolers, and that we can have peer interactions and develop those relationships. Okay. So any questions about that section? So Lisa is going to take you through the next section of slides.
And I'm sorry, bear with me, I've been fighting this cold that it sounds like half the room has for like 3 weeks, so. So one of the first pieces, we're talking about the family self-assessment. So we learned a lot with that partnership with